The Hartley Show is an entertainment program and does not own any of the copyrighted material featured in this episode. All copyrighted material featured will be used as fair use for the purposes of criticism, comment, news reporting, and/or researching. Taki.
Today on The Hartley Show, we're giving you a rundown of the year 2014, which includes my favorite purchases of the year. Hey ya. So, 2014, it was a giant year in the world of pop culture and comic licensing and comics. One of the important things to mention is comic sales have increased year after year, but the biggest thing of the year was indeed Guardians of the Galaxy. This movie kicked immense amounts of butt, and nobody really saw it coming. Of course, fanboys like myself wanted this to be the giantest movie of the year, but nobody ever would have guessed the whole world would understand I Am Groot. And now they do. How awesome was that? But of course, it wasn't just about Guardians of the Galaxy this year, or Captain America Winter Soldier, which is also amazing. It was about television this year. Comic book shows became huge this year. We had the massive success of The Flash, which also elevated the ratings of Arrow. We have Gotham now, which just got renewed for a second season. And of course, we've got the on the bubble Constantine and the soon to come out iZombie. So it was a huge year for just those DC projects. And then of course you have the Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was now followed up by the Marvel's Peggy Carter. What the hell are they calling that? Agent Carter. Yeah, Agent Carter. Which has been a great read. Watch, read. Look, I'm getting it all confused in my brain here because it feels like one meshy thing. Now, of course, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't nearly the success that Flash and Gotham was this last year. It was on the bubble the whole year long, and right towards the end of the season, it finally kind of got really good ratings, boosted by, of course, their crossover with Captain America, the Winter Soldier, thematically anyways. So a giant year for comics in media. But of course, it was a big year for the comic industry as a whole as well, because for the third consecutive year, since the introduction of the New 52, comic sales have continued to increase. Now, they've started to peter out a little bit this last year. The overall increase rate has slowed down a bit, but still, comic sales have increased. And with that, we now know the highest selling comic of the year was Amazing Spider-Man #1, which sold almost 500,000, 500,000 copies. The second highest selling comic of the year was Walking Dead Again, which saw, I believe, about 268,000, somewhere under there, basically about 200,000 copies less than Amazing Spider-Man #1 sold this year. Now, the important thing to note about these numbers is that they were jacked up by this company called Loot Crate. Loot Crate is this company that you could go and you give them money for an anonymous box, a randomized box of cool, geeky swag. And with that came the increase of sales of Walking Dead and Amazing Spider-Man. They probably increased their sales by 100,000 or a few 100,000 in the case of Amazing Spider-Man. And this is important to note because it isn't just the simple factor of people buying more copies in the stands. It's a matter of coming up with a licensing deal to pad up their numbers by a factor of a couple 100,000. And go figure, Marvel was able to accomplish that more successfully than Robert Kirkman of The Walking Dead. Still an important milestone. It's great to see comics at that note, at that rate. Now this year, we've got, in 2015, this week in fact, they came out with Spider-Man #1, Star Wars #1, the now owned 100% by Marvel Star Wars. And it's sold, they're saying they've printed more than 1 million copies at this point, which is a big whoop. I doubt they're actually going to break that number by anything else. But these are more signs that the comic industry is doing just tremendously well at the moment. But something really interesting to note, the top 10 in graphic novels this year was completely dominated by Image Comics. The first entry, Marvel didn't have any entries in the top 10 of graphic novels this year. It was almost entirely Marvel, with only one entry from DC, which was Batman. The first two best-selling comics this year, the world of graphic novels and trades, were both Sega. And of course, The Walking Dead was all over that. Also important to note that The Walking Dead first volume was still in this volume. And this book, this book has been selling like crazy, the first trade edition of Walking Dead. I suspect it's well over 1 million copies at this point. And I suspect it's finally taken over Watchmen as the best-selling comic of all time. I'm now going to talk about my favorite purchases of the year, and most of them are indeed collected editions because that's kind of my preferred format nowadays. So without further ado, I will talk about this. So my first favorite purchase of the year, I have to throw this one out there immediately, was Multiversity. Now this is the book that's completely brought back the multiverse in the world of DC Comics, written by one of my all-time favorites, Grant Morrison. This book is absolutely freaking fantastic, and it's way out there. A lot of people are having a hard time wrapping their head around it. I'm completely absorbed Grant Morrison, no problem. I've been reading this guy for so long now that pretty much nothing he ever does messes with my brain anymore, except for this series a little bit later on. Now, this series is continuing on from Final Crisis almost without missing a beat. This is the first storyline we've had that's officially part of DC continuity, the New 52, that ties back to the prior continuity. And I'm just going to go over these books quickly, but an absolutely fantastic book with great art by Ivan Rice. And hey, man, it brought back Captain Carrot in a giant, awesome way. And it's also managed to sort of find a way to have their own. DC now has their own versions of Image characters as well as Marvel characters. They have their own version of the Savage Dragon in here in Dino Cop. An absolutely fantastic read, and it's still going on right now. I can't recommend a single comic more than this. Now, along those same lines is a book by the name of Infinite Crisis. Now, this book is released first as a digital comic, and it ties into a comic, or not a comic book, a video game that DC has right now that's free to play, called Infinite Crisis, of course. Now, Infinite Crisis was a miniseries a number of years back. This also is all about the multiverse, and it feels to me like it should be part of DC continuity, but it's not because it's licensed, you know, it's a licensed book, more or less. Although, in my opinion, they could easily still tie this into the DC universe, and I think they should. I think they should make this part of regular continuity. If you want to buy this book, you can buy it in print, and when you buy it in print, it comes polybagged with a little additional sort of, there's a code in here so you can get some sort of perks in the video game, or you can buy it for 99 cents every week on the Comixology and DC apps. A great read. Enjoying the hell out of this. One of my other favorite books from DC for the year was the trade edition collection of Batman and Superman. And one of the things that always bothers me about collected editions is when you lose art in the gutter spaces. This book did, and DC trade editions overall tend to do a pretty good job of actually maintaining a lack of gutter loss in their books. Now, Batman Superman Volume 1 is written by Greg Pak with art by the ever-awesome Jason Lee. Jason Lee? Jay Lee. I don't know why I called him Jason. I guess I just assumed Jay means Jason, but I'm a whitey idiot. This first storyline, it follows the Superman-Batman team from the main Prime Earth, and Carlo's laughing at me because I call myself an idiot. He likes it when I call myself an idiot. Meeting the Earth 2 Batman and Superman that are older and more experienced, and this was a really fantastic storyline. They did a great job of collecting it in a nice, affordable format, so this, to me, was one of the best collected editions of the year. And one of my other favorite comics of the year, of course, was Green Lantern, The Wrath of the First Lantern. Now, this book wraps up the Jeff Johns run, although if you want to get the full feel for the end of the Jeff Johns Green Lantern run, you do need to indeed buy the Green Lantern The End book. It has a nice write-up he had and some additional pages and all that. But this is the full, complete finale of the Jeff Johns and the entire creative team of Green Lantern, Corps, and Red Lanterns. This is the full finale for the entire storyline overall. And another great, awesome trade paperback by DC with just a great price point, and it's complete. Everything you need is in here overall. Well worth your money if you love Green Lantern at all, and it was an end of a great run. Jeff Johns kicked ass in Green Lantern for something like almost 7 years. It was a long, great, awesome run. And then there's my favorite DC collected edition of the year. It's the JSA Omnibus, and this thing is an absolute super beaut. Now, I've complained in the past, and lots of people have, that DC Omnibus, or Omnibuy, they really aren't well produced, or were not well produced, but at this point now, we're at a point where we have an absolute lack of loss in the gutter space. This thing was made magnificently. This volume of the JSA Omnibus doesn't just include issues from the JSA run, it also includes the miniseries that led up to the series, as well as a miniseries that was important during the run of the series, and the JSA JLA hardcover edition. And this was also my entire history of modeling for comic book artists. Steve Sadowski is contained in this entire volume. So it has a really significance for me on a personal level as well, but a really great volume, a great read. This is James Robinson and Jeff Johns and David Goyer and Steve Sadowski, just at their absolute best in this book. Well worth your time and your dollars. So now on to the Marvel books. Now, these first two books I'm going to cover have nothing to do with how much I enjoy them, more so to do with how great I thought the format was. First up, Infinity by Jonathan Hickman. Now, I've really been enjoying the Marvel books overall, is Avenger Marvel books, that is to say, and I thought the storyline was enjoyable, but what I really enjoyed about this was, A, the hardcover version of this blew. Crappy paper, warped pages, you could see through them and all this stuff, but the trade edition was absolutely fantastic. One of the things that made this trade really good was that there's no double-page spreads in this book other than just sort of the placeholder cards or the credit pages. So there was an absolute lack of gutter loss in this book. A half-decent price point, but more importantly, it really improved on the hardcover that was a failure. Next up, Original Sin. Now, I really enjoyed this book, and this hardcover was fantastic. It included everything you needed for the Original Sin storyline. And the ending of it was a bit of a sort of lackluster ending, and it was a clear as day obvious reason. They made this for the sake of putting basically the black Nick Fury Jr. into the role of Nick Fury. It seemed pretty obvious that the whole purpose of this book was to do that, as well as maybe start to move the Fantastic Four licenses away from the Marvel Universe because of this whole stupid situation they're in right now with the Fantastic Four movie being owned by Fox, and Marvel's trying to distance themselves from the Fantastic Four. And it seems like they're actually literally moving towards moving the Fan Four and all of their properties like The Watcher out of their universe, at least temporarily. Next up, we got Moon Knight. Now, this book is absolutely fantastic on in all categories. Now, this is the epic line of books that Marvel is putting out now. This thing includes everything, man. This is all the beginning early appearances of Moon Knight through to his first series by Bill Sienkiewicz. And this book is just unbelievably cool. It includes Defenders books. It includes I think it might even include some letter columns. It includes all the trade house ads and just a fantastic price point of bubbity boo boo boo, $43.99 Canadian. Just a really great volume. This actually made me give away my Marvel Essentials Volume 1 of the book because it's totally redundant now that this thing exists. Just great. And a real improvement on the Marvel, the hardcover Marvel line of Marvel Masterworks. The Epic line is just better. Now, next up, we've got the original Marvel graphic novels they've been putting out this year. These were my two favorite of the year. We got the Thanos and the Spider-Man Family Business. In Spider-Man Family Business, it turns out that Peter Parker had a sister, or did he? A really fun read, great stuff. And of course, Thanos by Jim Starlin. How could you go wrong with that? One of the best things about these original graphic novels is they do come with the free digital copy as well. And the price point was half decent. Most importantly, I love original graphic novel concepts like this. I'm all down for give me an improved quality, higher page count book. I gobble this stuff up. And this line has been a lot of fun. But the big daddy of the Marvel Universe collected editions of the year for me was Young Avengers. An absolutely fantastic book, and what a cool idea. 12 issues, I think it was 12 issues anyways, but basically the concept behind this was to sort of encapsulate literally 2014 in a book. It was conceived of as a limited run, and it really was, the concept behind this was to give you 2014, basically in the Marvel Universe, encapsulated in one volume. And what a great job they did with the reproduction and the actual series. What the heck is this writer's name again? Kieran Gillen. Just a fantastic writer. And this was sort of a bit of a follow-up to his fantastic Loki series. Super highly recommended. Well done, Marvel. And now I'm going to talk about my favorite indie books of the year. First up, we have Super. Now, this book I discovered just as a sort of a weird thing on the stands. It was a screwed up copy that wasn't printed or bound properly. And I loved the book. And when I sent the guys who created the book a little email saying, hey, the copy that I got was kind of crappy, they sent me a brand new perfect edition, which was fantastic. And then it became part of the whole Kickstarter thing. And this book, wow, holy fun. One of the coolest things about this book is that as part of the Kickstarter thing that I joined in with and got me this hardcover, I was able to select my own sketch on the inside cover of this book, choose what I wanted, and it was done for me. Just an absolute joy. I chose the fabulous Fire Ant as the guy I wanted for the sketch, bursting his way through Spider-Man and the Human Torch, because he's kind of an amalgamation of those characters to a certain degree. The art is fantastic. This is a super fun book. I highly recommend it. You can get this at comic stores now, from what I understand. Great stuff. Next up, we have Copra. This is probably my favorite book in the universe right now, other than Multiversity. An incredibly cool book, and up until this first trade edition, super hard to get. Done by Michael Fife, who just wrapped up a run on All New Ultimates. This is basically a love letter to the John Ostrander, Luke McDonnell Suicide Squad run from, man, that was hard to say, Suicide Squad run from the 80s. And it's not just Suicide Squad. This isn't just some guy who's decided to take his own take on the Suicide Squad. It really has his own flavor, and he sort of amalgamates sort of the feel of the Marvel Universe into the DC Universe with this, but of course it's his own take, so it's really the Fife universe. A great, great, great book. It's ongoing right now. You can get it through Bergen Press or look through michaelfife.com, and this first trade collected edition is absolutely fantastic. Nerd boner supreme with this one. Next up, we got Project Black Sky Secret Files. Now, this sort of combines the Project Black Sky Dark Horse books, and my favorite book of the batch is Captain Midnight, which we just found out recently is going to be canceled. I'm hoping that means there's more Captain Midnight in the future. A really, really fun book, and I really want people to know about how awesome Captain Midnight is. This is a great, fun book. Go buy Captain Midnight. It's a hell of a lot of fun. I'm making hand gestures. Next up, Mass and Mobsters, available as a digital comic original. Oh my gosh. Next up, produced by Image Comics, at least as the collected edition, Mass and Mobsters. Now, this is a book produced originally as a digital comic through Monkey Bone Press, I think it is. Monkey something or other. It's a great digital comic imprint on Comixology. They also do Edison Rex. A great, great book. A hell of a lot of fun. There's a chapter in here by friend of the show, Jason Copeland, but it's truly, truly a fantastic book. If you know nothing about this, just go out and buy it. You'll be happy. Very cool, retro pulp feel, where mobsters sort of get the upper hand on superheroes and supervillains in the 30s and 40s. And last but absolutely not least is the seminal Grant Morrison series Zenith that's finally being reproduced right now by 2000 AD. This thing is unbelievably cool. The only bummer about buying this, and I have the originals actually, not all of them, which is the best part about this coming out right now. The bummer is that Grant Morrison doesn't want you to buy this because he's not making any money off of this, and it's this whole weird legal rights thing that's in hell. But man, is this book cool. Zenith is the son of superheroes who is no superhero himself. He's a pop star. He's the classic, he flies while drinking type. And Zenith is the story of him becoming a superhero, from going from being a pop star to a guy who's actually helping the world at large. An amazing, amazing book. And if you like Grant Morrison at all, this was the dawning of sort of the multiversal themes that Grant Morrison has always sort of really followed up on. And man, if you love Grant Morrison and Steve Yoel, this is the book for you. So there you have it, 2014 in review, my favorite books. As always, a giant thanks for watching, a massive thanks to Taz for letting us film here, and we'll see you next time.